The cover page of One Punch Man Chapter 195, or at least the third version of it, titled That Man, features Fubuki and Saitama celebrating the Year of the Snake. Blast and Sitch turn towards Saitama, Flashy Flash, and Monaco inside of Hero Association headquarters. Blast recognized the trio from their underground encounter during the Monster Association raid, and asked how they've been. In this version, everyone is in Sitch's office instead of the underground level, and that changes things quite a bit. Saitama didn't even know that Blast was the hero here, despite him being at the very top. Monaco was next to him, wearing a new sign that labeled her as a witness. That way, she doesn't get deleted for being a monster. It's also a bit of an ironic joke on account of her one massive eye. Although they came here to get in contact with Blast, Flashy Flash didn't actually expect the #1 hero to be present. He rushed forward in a blur. From there, he taunted Blast by asking about his fight against God. But just like their first encounter, Blast proved his superiority in the realm of speed by showing up behind Flashy Flash, saying that he's here to give a report. In the second version of this arc, we actually saw the contents of that report. Blast mentioned how strong Saitama truly is, verified him as the one who beat Monster Garo, and how he anticipates a threat far greater than Garo on the horizon. But that conversation took place long before Saitama and Flashy Flash showed up. In both of the previous versions, they ran into Blast while he was observing an experiment, one that involved the separation of monster cells in an attempt to reverse monsterization. Now, there's none of that. An incredulous Flashy Flash broke out into a cold sweat as he looked over his shoulder. The swiftness of their movements had a noticeable impact on the room. Sitch begged them not to behave that way in his office. It became clear to Saitama that Flashy Flash never learns his lesson. Even so, Flashy Flash still held on to his haughty attitude. He commanded Blast to share every bit of information he has on God. He even threatened to make the older hero talk by any means necessary. He also added Saitama to his threat, which the bald hero was not a fan of. Blast pointed out the ninja's hastiness and lack of composure. He assumed that Flashy Flash noticed a connection between God and the ninja village he was raised in. That really caught Flash's attention. It seemed like Blast's research had been fruitful. Meanwhile, Saitama felt like Flashy Flash never had any composure to begin with. In the old version, Blast was surprised it took Flashy Flash that long to figure it out. In this one, Blast planned on warning Flashy Flash anyways, so he was glad the ninja showed up, which is the total opposite of the two previous versions. There, he was far more reluctant to get the guy involved. Funny enough, in the second version, it was Saitama that Blast was relieved to see, since he wouldn't have to go looking for him. Blast explained that the leader of the ninja village has returned to life and has returned to action, so Flashy Flash should be careful. Again, the gravity of this warning has been severely reduced. Unfortunately, a bulk of our interactions with Blast have been during this repeatedly revised arc, so his characterization feels a bit all over the place at this point. From there, we move over to the hideout of Speedo Sound Sonic. He was holding a bag of ice on his head after being embedded into the ground by Saitama. He called out to the intruders he knew were nearby and told them to reveal themselves. The two invaders complimented Sonic's keen perception. Sonic wasn't happy about seeing these two jokers again so soon. Galewind and Hellfire Flame had their weapons drawn. The last time they met, they tried to take on Sonic and Flash. This time, they planned on taking them down individually. But the two shinobi were forced down by the sudden addition of weight. Sonic was surprised. Two more uninvited guests were pinning them down. They only wanted the fools to observe the two ninjas, not engage them. One of the men recognized Sonic as being from the 44th ninja class, known as the End. He introduced himself as Violent Force from Merciless, the 42nd class. Destructive Devastation was next to him and from the same class. Hiding behind a sheet on the wall was Rumbling Thunder from the 37th class, Golden. Thus far, this entire scene has remained exactly the same as it was with the second version. But from here on out, improvements have been made to the artwork and paneling. So for the third time, let's introduce all these guys. From the 21st class, Terror, we have Insanely Mad and Chaotic Mayhem. In both older versions, these guys didn't have much of an entrance and were just there. This time, they're a bit more dynamic. From the 40th class, Rigid, Brawny Muscle breaks his way onto the scene. In the first version, he was almost entirely covered by a text bubble. In the second version, he breaks a wall too, but there was less emphasis. From the 35th class chosen, Murky Darkness. The visual of him lurking in the shadows has been improved. From the 9th class Composed, we see Ballistic Bullet, and his panel is the same as it was in the old versions, just resized. From the 36th class, Bloodstained, Slaughterous Massacre emerged from the ground. This is more eerie and large than it was before. From there, everyone who was just standing around before gained a more involved entrance. Illusory Phantom from the 22nd class Resolve seemed to fall from a cloud. Hued Color and Melodic Tune from the 13th class Blossoming bounded onto the scene. Although, the sizing on these two looks a little weird. Freezing Ice from the 15th class, Sure Win, was surrounded by what his name implied. Empyrean Sky from the 27th class, Combined Power, was made a lot more interesting with the help of several swords. Shrieking Scream from the 5th class, Potential, shouted his name while looking like a cosplay of Gums. Instant Moment from the 19th class, Momentum, struck a cool pose. Multicolored Rainbow dropped down into a fighting stance. Balanced Equilibrium from the 16th class, Stability, kept his arms folded. And Vibrating Tremor simply shook in place. There were more people than Sonic thought. His expression towards their presence has been different in each version. This version seems to be the most neutral. Murata also took the time to make the Bag of Ice more detailed. They collectively introduced themselves as the Heavenly Ninja Party, Teninto. They consider themselves to be above the highest rank of the Ninja Village and have labeled themselves as Tenin. This panel has not changed. Sonic thought to himself that all of them are actually skilled fighters. Aloud, he mentioned how the village did not allow them to socialize with one another, so them teaming up was pretty strange. The art for this panel is new. More effort was put into it than the old version, but I do think that Sonic's previous expression carried a bit more tension than this neutral one. Violent Force admitted that they've changed a bit of how they think and operate since the village was destroyed. They've been biding their time and waiting for the enactment of a certain plan. The time has finally come for that man to reawaken, and in his wake, the world will be flipped on its head. Sonic was shocked, but knew just who Force was talking about. The panels for that section have remained the same, but their placement in the overall events have been slightly changed. From there, we're given a glimpse of their leader, that man, the founder of the village, known by many as the most powerful ninja in history. He's been in a capsule for 15 years, recovering from the coma Blast put him in with their fight, and he looks pretty gnarly here. This time around, he's made to be the sole focus instead of including Blast and Flashy Flash in the same shot. His face also isn't as shrouded as it once was. Maybe because we've seen it for more than a year before this. Instead, the two heroes are given their own panel as the Heavenly Ninja Party's priority targets. Once they're dealt with, the ninjas expect to rule the world with the power of ninjutsu. Galewind and Hellfire taunted their senior shinobi for believing they could win just by having more people. Flashy Flash's speed is far too great to be overcome that way. Anyone who's actually clashed with him would know that. The Tenin are simply inferior. Now, that's similar to what they said in the previous versions, but is notably different. Before, they were mostly taunting the group for needing so many people for revenge. Now, they're just hyping up Flashy Flash, which is a bit strange since they themselves plan on doing the very same thing by trying to fight him. And they already lost. Regardless, that angered their captors and earned them some harsh treatment. Force added that Sonic will be a part of their plan too. Since Sonic got along with the traitor in the past, they expect him to know Flashy Flash's weaknesses. They want him to lure Flash to this place on the following night. There, the Heavenly Ninjas will be waiting to jump him. As they left, they also added that that man would be showing up tomorrow too. Back at headquarters, Flash repeated the moniker. He remembered seeing the founder of the village inside a recovery capsule. That man hardly looked like a man at all. And here, he looks to be in far worse shape than he was in the old version. Next to him, there was also an enshrined cube. This panel was repurposed and cut differently this time, which is why Flashy Flash is barely in the shot. But speaking of not looking human, Sitch just realized that Monaco is a monster. Saitama explained that she's an interior designer. Monaco took it further by using her beam on Saitama's head to show off her specialty of indirect lighting. That pissed Saitama off, and earned her a tight grip in the background. Still serious, Flashy Flash ignored them and spoke about how he made the connection between the village and God. He had to wonder if the village was actually intended to create new minions for God. Blast confirmed it as a bird flew outside. As the mother bird approached her nest, he explained that they were searching for suitable pawns while training them to be assassins. Blast doesn't really know how Flashy Flash got out of there without that happening, but the thought of such a reality was enough to disturb him. Blast added that the founder has secretly gathered the highest ranking ninjas from the village to create an organization called the Teninto, along with the fact that they'll probably reach out to ninjas like him and Speedo Sound Sonic. The mention of Sonic's name caught Saitama's attention. Before, they didn't know that man was alive or about the Heavenly Ninja Party until they sent a letter to Flashy Flash. Anyways, Blast's only request was for Flashy Flash to stay away from that man. Flash asked if Blast was saying he's no match for them, but that wasn't the case. It's just that he wants to settle things himself. But in the previous version, that's exactly what he meant. Blast literally said that someone like Flashy Flash would die for sure. And even after Flashy Flash argued, Blast doubled down. Regardless, Flash processed Blast's words and surprisingly relented without much of a fuss. He went to Blast in order to confirm the source of manipulation. This was for the sake of making peace with his past. And now that the village is no more, he's not interested in what happens next. But Blast wasn't so sure that last part was true. To him, he wondered if Flashy Flash's refusal to work as a team might be a lingering effect of the village's policies. Now, that's a bit of a weird line to me, maybe I'm just not understanding it exactly. It's not like Flashy Flash came here alone or was being especially difficult. Besides, Blast was the one who said he wanted to handle this alone, so I don't know, I don't really get that. For Saitama, knowing that Sonic came from the same village explained why they're so similar and how they bother him, but he phrased it as the two ninjas being on the same level, which upset Flashy Flash. He reminded Saitama of his light show fight against Monster Garo and Platinum S. He didn't even have a sword at the time, so how could he possibly be on the same level as Sonic? But while all that was happening, Saitama wasn't watching at all. He was busy talking to Genos. Saitama accepted his point. Sonic did sink deeper in the ground when he was defeated. Flashy Flash wasn't very fond of his student's unit of measure. Then Saitama's perspective dawned on him. He began power scaling based on what Saitama saw and was annoyed by it. Like a wise master, Flashy Flash had to accept his student's misguided assumptions. To clarify, he'd recount his relationship with Sonic. He expected it to be a long story, and Saitama did not like the sound of that at all. Moving on, the cover page of One Punch Man Chapter 196, the third version of it, titled Ninja Village, features Tatsumaki sitting down and looking back. Simple as that. Before, it was a fitting and even rare cover shot of Flashy Flash. Then, for the second version, it was Fubuki sitting down. We pick up with a flashback from Flashy Flash. The Ninja Village trained children to be assassins for over 10 years before sending them to the underworld. Flash was 5 years old when his parents sent him to the village. Before completing their training and being given permission to graduate, escape from the village was impossible. Flash still has scars from his failed attempt to get away. In the Ninja Village, they treated 3 days as if they were 1. And during that time, they only had 6 hours of sleep. Their food was flavorless, and they were completely isolated from the outside world. Like machines, they did nothing but learn different ways to kill. They weren't supposed to express any emotions. Dead feelings were a sign of excellence. It was hell. A large man shouted at them about not fearing pain. Tears would only get in the way of their vision, so they'll need to suppress them. The exhausted children had no choice but to agree. Before, he was a scarred dark-skinned man with a mohawk wearing a tank top. He told the 21 members of the 44th class that they mustn't see each other as comrades. Talking to one another was considered unnecessary. If they meet in the field, it will only be as enemies meant to kill each other. Letting their guards down now would ensure their deaths. The first squad was allowed a break. The second squad would be learning in the classroom. Squads 3 and 4 would focus on training with blades. But the fifth squad still hadn't gotten rid of their worthless emotions. So they would be training their bodies in the swamp for 3 hours. As a perpetual member of the 5th Squad, Flashy Flash had a low score and experienced tougher training. They were regularly pushed to the brink, but since each of them would be valuable as future sources of income, they avoided completely breaking them and spared no expense. They were sustained by special drugs that were developed with secret methods, so they couldn't even take their own lives without permission. At some point, Flashy Flash decided to act like he was a failure. He pretended to be weak for the sake of going through the harshest training possible. One day, Flash was approached by another kid about him always being in Squad 5. He offered to give the boy some tips on how to properly use a blade. He introduced himself as Speed O Sound Sonic, and stressed the importance of good blade work. In the previous version of this scene, Flashy Flash was in the middle of training with a log, and the first time Sonic approached Flash, the two of them looked much younger. Flash gave his name, but mentioned how the two of them talking would get them in trouble. Although he was considered a failure based on his grades, Sonic was a rebel. He offered Flashy Flash advice for free. Since their builds were similar, they became sparring partners when it came to practicing advanced techniques. Sonic was the only person Flash could talk to, and that helped him regain his emotions. It's something he's very grateful for, which is a new admission. In the previous version, we actually saw Sonic explain how to properly use a knife. And with that, Sonic was made out to be better than Flashy Flash. And this flashback came a lot sooner this time around than it did in the previous versions. Before, we saw Flashy Flash remember these times to himself. This came up in the middle of his fight with Sonic, but now it happens before then. And now, he is actively conveying his history with Sonic. As failures, they received all manner of difficult tasks. They were left in a forest with genetically modified monsters and told to hide and survive for 30 days. Together, Flash and Sonic killed all of the beasts on the same day, and spent the rest of the time studying. So this version actually gives context as to why Flash and Sonic had a campsite outside of the village with a massive monster corpse nearby. Sonic seemed to carry their conversations at the time. He mentioned how Flash came to the village as a kid, that thanks to the memories he has of the outside world, he's been able to avoid losing himself. Meanwhile, Sonic himself was born in the village and has always lived like this. But he's not a failure like the instructors believe. He claimed to have been born with an indomitable spirit, so they can't control him. From there, he spoke about his dream for the future, how he would rise to the highest rank and overthrow the village. He planned to raise orphans like them in a more free and open environment, that assassination techniques are only good for killing. He believes that true value is in the power of living as you please, which is something they lack. Sonic asked Flashy Flash to help him since he can tell by the look in his eyes that they are the same. The notable difference between versions is that this time, Flash doesn't express any excitement towards this. We only see his face once, and he is completely neutral. Then, what was pretty much just a single panel of the fire was stretched into 2 pages, seemingly spread out so Murata would have to draw less and give the words more impact by breaking them up. Furthermore, in the old versions, Sonic had a map ready, and he already knew where he wanted to create his new village. That is completely missing this time around. After that, the flashback moves ahead by several years. At 16 years old, Flashy Flash's exceptional abilities had been acknowledged long ago, and he became the village's greatest prospect. Within, he felt a burning sense of justice. His graduation was held inside of a ninja-themed cathedral. The instructors wore robes and unveiled one of God's cubes. In the next moment, Flashy Flash slaughtered them. He went full-on Itachi and killed everyone else in the facility. A moment he still seems to be proud of despite being a hero. But because Sonic was sick in bed, he missed the whole thing. In the old versions, Flashy Flash ran away from the village, which apparently didn't work in this version. And almost immediately afterwards, someone else wiped it out. Flashy Flash hadn't gone back there until just recently when Saitama went looking for Monaco. When he did, the place had been turned into Swiss cheese. It was actually Blast who did the deed, and he did so to recover the cube that they had. That made him seem like a pretty brutal guy, and Blast wouldn't even blame Flashy Flash for holding a grudge, which was quite different from his stance in the second version. There, he felt responsible for all the young ninjas who were trained by the village and their assassination victims, because he failed to stop that man in the past. Eventually, Flashy Flash heard about the Hero Association and decided to join. Since Sonic became a criminal, Flashy Flash assumed that the ninja lost his way while going towards his dream. He imagined that sudden exposure to the outside world may have been difficult. Sonic sought out jobs that required assassination skills. Everyone took off their shoes before entering the new scene. It's been a while since all that happened, so Flashy Flash didn't expect Sonic to still be alive. They've all been seated around a table listening to him talk in Saitama's apartment, which is totally new. Saitama wanted to know why they transitioned to his place. According to Flashy Flash, it's only proper for a disciple to offer his master tea while he talks about his past. To that, Geno slammed a hot cup onto his head. He popped in from next door and clearly wasn't moved by the story, or why Sonic holds a grudge. That said, he was curious why Flashy Flash let Sonic get away when he destroyed the village. Because of Flash's failure to do so, his master Saitama has to deal with Sonic on a regular basis. Flashy Flash glared. Monaco figures that it's because they're friends. Meanwhile, Sitch was focused on Genos' alterations to the dorm. Apparently, Flashy Flash put poison in Sonic's stew, but his resistance kept him alive. Blast figured that Flash did that so Sonic would stay away from the massacre since he didn't want to kill him. So yet again, food from a fellow ninja gave Sonic bubble guts. Saitama focused on the mention of stew. Everyone turned to him. He pointed out that he has some broccoli and carrots lying around in the fridge. They all just stared. Next up, the cover page of One Punch Man Chapter 197, the third version, titled Karma, features Fubuki raising her hands high. Flashy Flash coughed to emphasize the point he was trying to make with the whole story, that he was on a higher level than Sonic in the village. But instead of listening, Saitama was thinking about how he still needs to buy some beef and onions. Flashy Flash stood up and spoke to Blast. He told the #1 hero to give his regards to that man, whoever he may have been when he was human. Blast was surprised by that. Then Flash made his exit. This was actually Genos' first time meeting Blast. He introduced himself and added that he's heard everything from Sitch. He also told Blast that if he has any trouble, he should talk to Saitama anytime. And even then, Saitama was still trying to figure out dinner. Blast agreed to think about it. That's quite the contrast from Blast's plan to stick around Saitama from the previous version. Elsewhere on the premises, an employee came up to Flashy Flash and handed him an express letter with a shuriken seal. So he actually just gave up and walked away. I would have never guessed. Meanwhile, Blast and Sitch left Saitama's place and were in an elevator together. To Blast, it seemed like Flashy Flash figured something out. It wasn't exactly surprising, since he's the one who told the ninja about God despite not wanting to get him involved. Sitch claimed that Blast could have told Flash that that man is being controlled by God and isn't responsible for his actions. He believed that saying that would have been a better way to protect that man. It would deflect any thoughts of revenge against him, and it seems like that's what Blast wanted. Blast admitted that he just doesn't want to make things any worse for that man if he ever becomes human again. Although, he feels like Void would scold him for trying to act gullible. Blast looks solemn. That man also grew up in an organization like the Village, where after graduation, the students split up and kill each other for power and control. Apparently, Void was the only survivor. That's a bit of new knowledge. The most we saw in the previous version were 2 of his ninja subordinates. But this sort of thing is a common fate among shinobi. Sitch seemed to reminisce over how good the former ninja once was, how he supported Blast in the battle, and was a key part of the operation. Empty Void. Since he's revealed himself, they'll use this chance to free him from God's control. This time around, the image of what Empty Void used to look like is slightly more shrouded. And unlike in the previous versions, Blast and Sitch didn't mention that man's true name or identity to the others at all. The concept of returning Empty Void to the side of humanity seems more like an unlikely hope, since this time around, we don't see any experiments related to reversing monsterization. So I guess Hamukichi won't get a chance to redeem himself. Apparently, Void can't be found as long as he's hidden due to the special barrier he creates, which is why they couldn't find the ninja village. If Void disappears again, they won't find him again. So now, instead of sneaking between dimensions, Void's means of escape has been downgraded to being a barrier he uses to hide. Blast emphasized that this is their last chance. He pulled up a projection of an abandoned building for Sitch to see. It was Sonic's hideout. He clarified that this is where that man will be. But how exactly does Blast know that? In the previous versions, it made sense for him to know because he found out at the same time as the rest of the group thanks to Sonic's letter. Furthermore, Sonic only just received confirmation that the other ninjas would be showing up at his place. So how would Blast have any idea about that if he's been with Sitch this whole time? Well, this time around, Blast, miraculously, has an earpiece in. And so he overheard the Tennien's entire conversation. Okay, but that just begs for more questions to be asked. Before, he needed Sonic's address to be written. So how does he already know Sonic's location? And they're ninjas, so how was he able to gather this much information about their plan, or even plant the bug in the first place? And where did he get this technology that lets him pull up projections? Anyways, Genos wondered where Saitama was going. The hero had something in mind, so he was headed to Sonic's hideout. Genos was in the middle of walking Rover. He was surprised that his master knew the ninja's location. It turns out that Sonic used to spam Saitama's old place with challenge letters, and the Hero Association forwarded one of them as junk mail. His letter has a shuriken seal, and has Sonic's address. Genos asked why Saitama was going. Apparently, Saitama has seen something like this before. Like with the Paradisers, it seemed to him like guys who have nothing better to do have gathered to cause trouble and seek attention. And if you remember, Saitama first met Sonic while dealing with those guys. Since an army of ninjas are headed to Sonic's place, he'll go there and beat up Sonic and anyone else like him. He's hoping that with that, Sonic will finally leave him alone. That maybe Sonic just doesn't want to be alone. So this time, Saitama is being proactive and going to deal with the ninjas himself. Since Blast is headed to the same location, we've sort of gone back to how things were with the first version, where Saitama claimed to have nothing better to do, so he went with Blast to the hideout. In the second version, he went out for curry udon with Monaco, yet miraculously wound up in a forest and conveniently played a part in the fight. With that, he headed off and we leave the Hero Association. So no dimension slash attack on the building from Empty Void this time around. There's also no mention of Garo besides Flashy Flash's internal tier list. So that whole Empty Void devouring Cosmic Garo's escaping power thing never happened. And the fact that Saitama was the one who took Garo down is never acknowledged by Blast. This version is clearly a lot more conservative. Without any knowledge of how these chapters used to be, there's not much that points towards Empty Void being especially strong. Blast didn't even say that they were equally matched in power like he did before. There was this whole thing about Void being the only one with the ability to open the gate of the Celestial Rock Cave, which connects to God's dimension. Now, it's hard to see why he even matters outside of sentiment. But maybe that'll change. From there, we find ourselves in a mountainous forest. Flash mentioned the challenge letter. He approached Sonic, wondering what this was all about. Sonic began to draw his blade. He claimed to have forgotten about Flash before seeing him the day before. From his perspective, they still have a score to settle. Assuming a fighting stance, he expressed that things are different from their training days. So it's time to fight. Flashy Flash was looking forward to making his superiority clear, so he didn't mind fighting. But was Sonic really about to waste the life he almost lost in the past? That made the other ninja scoff. He took a step forward and began creating after images. So without their shared enthusiasm over a specific location to place the future village, we don't have the Trash Heap Mountain for a battlefield. Now, it's just a plain forest. The cover page of One Punch Man Chapter 198, the third version, titled The Way You Are Now, features Saitama with a large tree ahead of him. Sonic began the fight with his 10 Shadows funeral technique. Flashy Flash dexterously avoided the attacks. He and Sonic matched blades. Then, Flash kicked the ninja sky high. Sonic twirled several times. Eventually, he shifted his trajectory with the help of a tree branch. He revealed and hurled a barrage of ferociously explosive shuriken. An unimpeded Flashy Flash continued his pursuit. Sonic hadn't expected that, so he reached for his sword. His signature smile grew as he and his old friend collided yet again. And compared to the second version, Murata fixed Flashy Flash's weird-looking mouth. Finally, Sonic seemed to be taking the lead. Flashy Flash was forced to create some space between them. He prepared himself to continue, and so they clashed again and again. They seemed to be in a deadlock. They forced themselves apart. Their following move was in perfect sync. They matched with wind blade kicks. Just then, Sonic split into two figures. The after images rushed to pummel their opponent. This was his Heavy Sonic Fist Barrage. Flashy Flash maintained his concentration and blocked each attempt. Much to Sonic's rising frustration, they separated yet again. Flash complimented Sonic's moves. Too bad he's too strong for them. Sonic couldn't believe how effortlessly his attacks were deflected. Then it happened. Flashy Flash went for his ultimate technique. Sonic saw it coming. He still hadn't shown Flashy Flash his secret move, and he wouldn't have any time to, since Flashy Flash's high-heeled boots were already closing in on his face. Flash kicks. Sonic could only brace against the assault. He hurtled across the forest. Trees were uprooted and a trench was created. Flash hadn't expected to use his ultimate move. He was pleased to see that Sonic has gotten stronger. And with the way he is now, Flash has an idea for what they can do. So, like with the flashback changes earlier, it seems like Flashy Flash is being kept in a more favorable and powerful light. I mean, Sonic actually saw his move coming this time and still got slapped. Granted, the first version was pretty anticlimactic. There wasn't much back and forth, and Flashy Flash ended the fight with one move. And the entire fight itself was sandwiched between two other plot points and over in a blink. For the second version, Sonic had way more tricks up his sleeve, and the two of them seemed to be having fun. The fight was also longer, and there was a lot more back and forth. Sonic immediately recovered from Flashy Flash's first ultimate move and threw his shuriken. And instead of expecting them to work on their own, he attacked at the same time. That caused Flash to struggle for a moment, and Sonic threw more shuriken, having them close in from both sides. 9 Shadow Funeral has now become 10 Shadow Funeral. Sonic's after images actually tricked Flashy Flash, and they traded momentum several times. Flashy Flash had to push things to the next level to really differentiate himself, and even took damage. So for me, the second version of the fight is easily the best. But if Flashy Flash is meant to be clearly superior, I understand the shift. But let me know which version of the fight you prefer. The cover page of One Punch Man Chapter 199, the third version, titled Close Call, features Captain Mizuki tying back her hair. This feels like an alternate version of what used to be the cover of Chapter 200. A cluster of bladed weapons headed right for Flashy Flash, but he managed to evade. The Heavenly Ninja Party descended and clustered around the embedded weapons. Flashy Flash faced them all from atop a tree. They wondered how Flashy Flash already knew about them. Along with the fact that this isn't where they were supposed to fight, it seemed like Sonic betrayed them. Force claimed to have never trusted the fool to begin with. But thanks to him, they've been able to see their opponent's ninjutsu ahead of time. Now, they would commence the execution of the traitor Flashy Flash. Before then, Scream was hurled away. Sonic has re-entered the battle. They asked if he's gone to the other side entirely. Sonic wanted to deal with Flashy Flash himself. The Tennin decided to interrupt right when it was getting good, so he told them to stay out of it. Flashy Flash was surprised to see Sonic survive his flash kicks. His expectations have been exceeded. He's pretty sure that Sonic could have landed a counterattack if he'd gone all out earlier. But according to Sonic, Flash is only alive because of their uninvited guests. Mockingly, Flash agreed that the group is pretty annoying. But from their perspective, Sonic had clearly lost his mind and was just begging to be hunted down too. They reminded him that each of them is an elite ninja, and they are greatly outnumbered. So there's just no point in resisting. Sonic scoffed while drawing his sword. Both he and Flashy Flash were ready to defy the odds. Meanwhile, Saitama was walking through Sonic's neighborhood. With nobody around, Saitama was reminded of how lonely his old area used to be. Force smiled. Suddenly, Brawny Muscle appeared behind Hellfire and Galewind. He used them as projectiles by punching them ahead of the pack. They planned to cut down all of the rejects at once. But this duo is just as defiant. Galewind surrounded them with nearly invisible threads. Flashy Flash concentrated. Then, in a flash, the two had been successfully detained. Everyone else was surprised. The Tenin missed Sonic and Flash. They were easily countered, and Flash still had his eyes closed. Sonic wondered why Flash wasn't killing the two he caught. Flash clarified that the two of them used to be monsters, but have turned back into humans. Because of that, they might be useful test subjects when it comes to researching the reversal of monsterization. With that, Sonic turned to mock the future lab rats. The cover page of One Punch Man Chapter 200, version number 3, titled "Where Is It?", features a simple pinup of Tatsumaki. Flash defended against murky darkness right as Brawny Muscle closed in. With a hefty punch, he shattered Flash's sword. Flash looked down in surprise. He tossed the broken weapon, claiming that it wouldn't cut it. It was a replacement for his sword insta-kill, which he lost during the Monster Association raid, which just makes Flashy Flash seem even stronger since he hasn't been using a suitable sword for all this time. Sonic rushed past Flash, charging right into the middle of the fray. The Tenin couldn't believe he'd be so foolish. Just then, Sonic split into several duplicates. Then he began strafing with even more of them. Flash was in disbelief. This was a super multi-shadow clone technique. Their numbers rose to more than 30. But Brawny Muscle wasn't as bewildered as the rest and backhanded Sonic. Sonic managed to recover. To Brawny Muscle, it was just a cheap trick. So in this version, Brawny Muscle is actually a low S-class level powerhouse. He might actually give Tank Top Master a run for his money. This version of the Shadow Clone technique is something Sonic picked up from the time Saitama imitated his moves. Sonic thought he could blow some of them away with a sonic boom like Saitama had, but he ended up just getting past them with a bunch of sideways hops. So in theory, if he approaches this as a means of evasion instead of attack, he might have something really impressive and better suited for him. Flash asked the other ninja what he was doing, since clones aren't suitable for dealing with so many opponents. In response, Sonic tossed the ingrate a sword. Flash inspected it. Now he was beginning to see how Sonic managed to survive this long. The condescension in that statement made Sonic rethink their alliance. And Empyrean Sky just wanted his sword back. Ballistic Bullet taunted them about their lowly existences, how they could never understand their plan and would die without ever knowing true freedom. Flash didn't care to understand their plan in the least. To him, it's the direction of a loser whose only shot in life is staying a slave to the village. And the supposedly emotionless ninja were pretty mad about that. Flash also thought back on what a young Sonic had to say about the true value of freedom. But man, the art definitely took a hit with the last few panels. It's the sort of thing I would normally ignore. But considering our current redraw loop, it's a bad look. Flashy Flash thought about the power to live as you please as the Tenin swarmed him. Sonic was knocked back, but managed to recover with help from a tree. He kicked Instant Moment right in the face. Compared to a punch from Saitama, their hits were like gentle nudges. This time around, they're not compared to grains of sand next to Saitama, which was a pretty cool moment in my book. Flashy Flash has honed his skills and become far stronger than he was before, so their techniques were like child's play to him. Again, Flashy Flash recalled the words of a younger Sonic. All the while, he continued to dodge. He wondered how Sonic can be so sure that such a thing is even real. They all come from the same place. They were manipulated for so long that they can't even picture what freedom truly is. Just then, all of their attacks were casually interrupted by Blast. He told them that there's no need to spill any more blood. The Tenin demanded to know who the hell this guy was and where he came from. Then Flashy Flash said his name. Everyone else was in shock. Even Sonic believed that the top hero had gone missing, which is peculiar. Absent, sure, but I don't know that I remember Blast ever being labeled as missing. And why exactly would Sonic care? The Tenin decided to all attack at once since Blast was also on their hit list. But without even trying, Blast dealt with each and every one of them in an instant. Flash and Sonic were wide-eyed. All the Tenin were down, and the sun was still shining. Sonic wasn't happy about Blast ruining their fun. Flash asked Blast why he'd come. Apparently, Rover tracked Sonic's scent and led him to their location. We don't see a kunai or shuriken seal on it, so it's unclear which letter this is, or where Blast got it in the first place. Saitama needs his for Sonic's address, and Flash presumably left with his. Since Blast is with Rover, then maybe Genos gave him another one from Saitama's junk mail. But why would Blast think to ask for it in the first place if he seemed to already know the location of the hideout? If he showed a bit more interest in Saitama this time, maybe I could see him trying to get the bald hero to come along with him. But for now, it's unclear. However, if Blast is also here, then that means Saitama is the only one headed to the original ambush location. We've seen absolutely no dimension shenanigans from MT Void thus far, and his ability to avoid capture has been downgraded to being a simple barrier. All signs point towards Saitama one-tapping the village founder. That would be far more in line with the webcomic version. And at this point, sure, just do it, I'm ready to move on. Before this arc, Flashy Flash and Sonic were two of my favorite characters, but now, I wouldn't mind going a while without seeing them. In the previous version of this Tenin fight, Sonic and Flash worked more like a dynamic duo. It was really cool to see how well their mirrored movements worked together. They were also really brutal and actually slaughtered all of the Tenin. They were on par with one another, stride for stride. In the first version, they didn't kill the Tenin, but Flashy Flash easily wiped them all out by his lonesome. Sonic, Hellfire, and Galewind could only watch in disbelief. Flash was aura farming so hard that Sonic got a nosebleed since Flash was everything he wanted to be. And I'm glad that was changed, but now, neither of them did especially well. They didn't manage to defeat even a single member of the Tenin. Yet Blast took them all out in a blink. And because of that, so far, this is the first version where the Tenin survive. I don't think we'll see them explode into flesh horrors that pooled to create MT Void like we did with the first version. With all that said, forgive me for having you guys wait so long for these chapter discussions. I wasn't very happy about rehashing the same arc for the third time, especially since it's become so much more tame than all the dimensional stuff we were shown. But I still love this series, and I can't help myself when it comes to talking about it, so here we are. Also, I've seen a lot of you guys wonder if these redraws might actually be different timelines and dimensions. No, there's really no way that's the case. The physical volumes are the only definitive version of the manga, and they're not about to make all of this into 3 or more volumes and not explain how they connect just to claim that they're different timelines. Simply put, the manga is just a mess. There's plenty we can point to, but ultimately, something isn't working as it should, and the product is being negatively impacted. I just hope that changes. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku, thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.